The dense forest of Konoha was eerily silent, the usual chirping of birds replaced by an unsettling stillness. Naruto Uzumaki crouched low on a thick tree branch, his bright blue eyes scanning the shadows below. The air smelled of damp earth and something else, something unnatural. His grip tightened around a kunai as his instincts screamed danger. He had been tracking strange chakra signatures for hours, remnants of an unknown force that had been terrorizing nearby villages. The report spoke of shadowy figures that moved like puppets, draining the life from anyone they touched. Naruto clenched his teeth. Whatever these things were, they wouldn't hurt another person if he had anything to say about it. A rustling in the underbrush snapped his attention to the left. 3 figures emerged, their bodies composed of shifting darkness, their hollow eyes glowing with an eerie violet light. They moved with unnatural precision, their limbs stretching and contorting like marionettes controlled by an unseen hand. Naruto's heart pounded, but he grinned. "All right, freaks, let's see what you've got." He launched himself forward, kunai flashing as he aimed for the nearest puppet's core. The blade struck, but passed straight through as the creature dissolved into smoke, reforming behind him. A cold hand lashed out, grazing his shoulder, and Naruto hissed as a numb chill spread through his muscles. He backflipped away, landing in a defensive stance. Shadow clones. He barked, and a dozen copies of himself materialized in a burst of smoke. The clones charged, kunais and fists flying, but the shadow puppets weaved through the attacks effortlessly, their forms flickering between solid and intangible. One puppet lunged, its elongated arm spearing toward Naruto's chest. He barely dodged, rolling to the side as the ground where he'd stood erupted in a spray of dark energy. "TCH, annoying." Naruto growled. He formed a familiar hand sign. Wind style, Rasengan. A swirling sphere of chakra formed in his palm, and he slammed it into the closest puppet. The creature screeched as the energy tore through its form, dispersing it into wisps of shadow, but within seconds, the fragments slithered back together. Naruto's eyes widened. They regenerate? He didn't have time to ponder further as the remaining puppets lunged in unison, their movements synchronized like a deadly dance. He barely managed to block one strike with a kunai, but another puppet's claw raked across his ribs, sending a jolt of paralyzing cold through his body. Gritting his teeth, he channeled Kurama's chakra, his skin tingling as orange energy flared around him. The Nine Tails power surged, burning away the numbness. His nails sharpened into claws, and his whisker marks darkened. "Let's try this again," he roared, darting forward with blinding speed. This time, his strikes landed with crushing force. He grabbed one puppet by its shadowy throat and hurled it into a tree, the impact cracking the trunk. Another he bisected with a chakra-coated swipe, but the halves merely writhed before merging again. Naruto scowled. They're not staying down. He needed a different approach. As the puppets regrouped, their hollow eyes locked onto him, he felt a familiar presence in his mind. "These things feed on chakra, Kit," Kurama rumbled. "They're not alive, they're constructs. Tear them apart faster than they can heal." Naruto smirked. "Got it." He slammed his palms together. Multi-shadow clone jutsu. 100 clones erupted around him, each one glowing with Kurama's energy. The puppets hesitated, then the clones attacked in a relentless wave. Fists, kicks, and Rasengans pummeled the shadowy figures, overwhelming their regeneration. One puppet managed to grab a clone, draining its chakra until it vanished, but 3 more took its place. Naruto himself weaved through the chaos, his Rasengan shattering one puppet after another, their screeches filling the air. Just as the last puppet dissolved, the forest fell silent again. Naruto panted, his clones dispersing. But before he could relax, the shadows at his feet writhed. A massive, clawed hand erupted from the ground, seizing his ankle. He barely had time to curse before he was yanked into the earth, darkness swallowing him whole. The battlefield was a swirling chaos of shadows and chakra as Naruto faced off against the living shadow puppets, their inky forms twisting like living nightmares. The air crackled with energy as Naruto gritted his teeth, his blue eyes blazing with determination. He could feel the Kyuubi's power surging through him, his golden cloak flaring as he dodged a razor-sharp tendril of darkness. "These things don't quit," he muttered, flipping backward and forming a barrage of shadow clones. The clones charged, each one weaving hand signs in unison before unleashing a devastating Rasengan barrage. The explosions lit up the battlefield, but the shadows merely reformed, their hollow laughter echoing. Sasuke, his Sharingan spinning wildly, analyzed the puppets' movements. "They regenerate too fast," he called to Naruto. "We need to hit them with something they can't absorb." His Rinnegan flared as he summoned Amaterasu, the black flames licking hungrily at the shadows. The puppets screeched, their forms writhing as the fire consumed them, but even then, the darkness slithered away, regrouping. Sakura, her fists crackling with chakra-enhanced strength, slammed into the ground, creating a shockwave that shattered the earth beneath them. "We need to find their core," she shouted. "They're being controlled by something." Naruto's mind raced as he pushed his sage mode further, sensing the faintest trace of chakra pulsating deep within the shadows. "There." He pointed toward a swirling mass of darkness at the center of the horde. "That's the source." With a roar, he channeled Kurama's power, his body radiating with orange energy as he transformed into his tailed beast mode. The ground trembled as he lunged forward, a massive Rasen shuriken forming in his palm. The puppets surged to intercept him, but Sasuke was already there, his Susanoo skeletal arm swiping through them like a scythe. The battle reached a fever pitch as Sakura dodged a shadowy blade, countering with a devastating punch that sent shockwaves through the enemy ranks. Her muscles burned, but she refused to slow down. "I won't let them take another step," she vowed, her healing chakra knitting her wounds as fast as they appeared. Naruto's Rasen shuriken connected with the core, the explosion sending a shockwave that nearly knocked them all off their feet. For a moment, the shadows faltered, but then they surged back, stronger than before. The puppets' laughter grew louder, their forms shifting into monstrous amalgamations of their previous selves. "They're evolving," Sasuke realized, his Rinnegan narrowing. "We need to combine our attacks." Naruto nodded, his determination unshaken. "Let's end this." With a shared glance, they moved in perfect sync. Sasuke's perfect Susanoo flared to life, its sword gleaming with Amaterasu, while Naruto gathered nature energy, his Rasengan swirling with wind and Kurama's chakra. Sakura positioned herself between them, her fists glowing with concentrated power. The final clash was cataclysmic. Sasuke's blade cleaved through the shadows, the black flames consuming them, while Naruto's Rasengan detonated with the force of a hurricane. Sakura's punch shattered the remnants, the shockwave obliterating the last traces of darkness. The battlefield fell silent, the only sound their ragged breaths. But as the dust settled, a single, pulsing shadow remained, a grotesque, humanoid figure with glowing red eyes. It smirked. "You've done well. But this is far from over." Naruto clenched his fists, his body aching but his spirit unbroken. "Then we'll keep fighting," he growled. The real battle had only just begun. The air crackled with tension as Naruto Uzumaki stood amidst the ruins of the hidden leaf, his breath ragged, his orange jumpsuit torn and scorched. Before him, the living shadow puppets writhed like a tide of darkness, their hollow eyes fixed on him, their forms shifting between humanoid silhouettes and grotesque, elongated claws. They were relentless, born from the twisted jutsu of a forgotten enemy, and they fed on chakra, draining, consuming, never stopping. Behind Naruto, his allies lay exhausted, Sasuke's Sharingan flickered weakly, Sakura's fists trembled with fatigue, and even Kurama's growls had dulled to a whisper. This was it, the final stand. Naruto clenched his fists, feeling the last dregs of his chakra surge. "I won't let you take another step," he roared, his voice raw with defiance. The puppets lunged, their shadows stretching like tendrils, but Naruto moved faster, weaving hand signs with blinding speed. Sage art, super-tailed beast Rasen shuriken. The spiraling sphere of energy erupted from his palm, splitting into dozens of smaller orbs that detonated in a cataclysmic storm, shredding through the puppets' ranks. Yet, as the smoke cleared, the shadows merely reformed, laughing in hollow, echoing voices. Sasuke staggered to his feet, his Rinnegan flaring. "They're adapting," he gritted out. "Every attack just makes them stronger." Sakura wiped blood from her lip, her mind racing. "Then we hit them with something they can't absorb, something beyond chakra." Naruto's eyes widened. Beyond chakra? There was only one thing left, their will, their bonds. He glanced at Sasuke, and in that moment, an unspoken understanding passed between them. The two sprinted forward, Naruto's Rasengan forming in one hand, Sasuke's Chidori crackling in the other. The puppets surged to meet them, but this time, Naruto didn't aim for their bodies, he aimed for the space between them, where the shadows thinned. With a deafening clash, their attacks collided, not against flesh, but against the air itself, creating a shockwave of pure force. The puppets shrieked as the impact disrupted their cohesion, their forms flickering like dying embers. But it wasn't enough. The shadows retaliated, lashing out with whip-like limbs that sent Naruto crashing into the rubble. Pain exploded through his ribs, but he forced himself up, his vision swimming. Sasuke wasn't faring any better, his Susanoo flickered in and out of existence, its skeletal frame barely holding. Sakura shouted something, but her voice was lost in the chaos. Then, a memory flashed in Naruto's mind, His father's smile, Irika's praise, Hinata's unwavering faith. His fingers dug into the dirt. "I'm not done yet," he whispered. With a surge of determination, he reached deep, past his limits, past exhaustion, into the very core of his being. Kurama's voice echoed in his mind. "You idiot. You'll burn out completely." Naruto grinned. "Then let's burn bright." Golden chakra erupted around him, not as a cloak, but as a blazing inferno. The ground trembled as he launched himself forward, his fist connecting with the lead puppet's chest. This time, the impact wasn't just physical, it carried the weight of every promise he'd ever made, every bond he'd ever forged. The puppet's form shattered like glass, and the others recoiled, their shadows writhing in agony. Sasuke seized the moment, his Rinnegan spinning wildly. Amaterasu. Black flames engulfed the remaining puppets, but even these began to flicker as the shadows struggled to adapt. Then, Sakura's fist slammed into the earth, splitting the battlefield with raw, concussive force. The combined assault was too much, the puppets' forms destabilized, their darkness unraveling like thread from a spool. With a final, ear-splitting howl, the living shadow puppets dissolved into nothingness, leaving only silence in their wake. Naruto collapsed to his knees, his chakra spent, his body screaming in protest. Sasuke slumped beside him, breathing heavily, while Sakura rushed to their side, her hands already glowing with healing chakra. The aftermath was slow to settle. The village lay in ruins, but the sun still rose, casting long shadows, ordinary ones, harmless and fleeting. The enemy was gone, but the cost was clear. As the villagers emerged from hiding, their eyes filled with awe and gratitude, Naruto realized something had shifted. This battle hadn't just been about survival, it had been about proving that even in the face of despair, their bonds were unbreakable. Weeks later, as the hidden leaf rebuilt, whispers spread of a new era, one where the ninja world no longer relied solely on power, but on the strength of its connections. Naruto stood atop the Hokage monument, looking down at the bustling village below. Sasuke joined him, his gaze thoughtful. "You changed things again, idiot," Naruto laughed, rubbing the back of his head. "Nah, we did." And as the wind carried their words away, the future stretched before them, brighter than ever.